Not every pretty bottle is good for the job you want it to do. The bottle shape, the size, the material, the neck opening, and the pump matter more than what most people realize. You may assume a bottle is just a container. If it looks nice, it holds liquid, and seems to dispense things, then it's probably enough, right? Well, after years of selling bottles, answering customers' questions, solving problems, testing pumps, and hearing where people get really frustrated, I can tell you that bottle choice is a lot more layered than what it first may appear. And most of the time, people don't realize it until after they buy a bottle. That's when they notice it's either hard to refill, or it doesn't fit where they wanted it to go, or it doesn't dispense the amount of liquid they were hoping for, and a number of other issues that they haven't thought about yet. So in this video, I want to walk through 6 things that matter when you're choosing a bottle for a specific purpose. Not to overcomplicate it, but just to help you make a better choice before you actually purchase one. One of the easiest ways to choose the wrong bottle is to ignore size. And I don't just mean whether it's small or large, I mean whether the size actually fits the job. Size determines how much the bottle holds, and it affects how often you have to refill it. If you're using something every day, that matters. A bottle that's too small might look nice, but if you're constantly refilling it, that gets old fast. At the same time, a bigger bottle is not always better, because size also determines whether that bottle will physically fit in the space where you want to use it. Will it fit in your shower niche or shelf you had in mind? Will it work in your shower caddy? Will it overpower a smaller sink area? That's why size is not just about capacity, it's also about space. And this is one of those things that people tend to underestimate. They see a bottle online, they think that bottle looks about right, but about right isn't always right once it shows up in real life, in your home, in your shower, or on your counter. A bottle can be pretty and even highly recommended by other people and still be too tall or too short, too narrow or too bulky, or just wrong for the space that you actually need it to be in. So when you think about bottle size, don't just ask how much it holds. Instead, ask whether the amount makes sense for how often you're going to be using it and where it needs to go. Now, a beautiful bottle that is the correct size for the job can still be the wrong shape for the job you want it to do. This one matters more than what most people think, because shape actually affects the stability of the bottle. And stability affects the experience that you have with it when you're using it after you get it home. A tall, slim bottle might look elegant and when it's sitting still, but the real question is what happens when someone starts pressing down on the pump that's on top of that bottle. Does it stay put? Does it feel secure? Does it require more effort to avoid tipping it when you're pumping? Shape affects footprint and balance. It affects how the bottle handles natural human use. And that matters even more in places like kitchens and bathrooms, where people are using things very quickly and over again in their very slippery, wet conditions. They're not approaching the bottle like it's a delicate object. They're just washing their hands, right? Or pumping shampoo without thinking about it much. That's real life. And in real life, shape matters. This is one reason I really pay attention to bottle form in a more serious way than I think most people assume. Because once a bottle is in use in your daily life, its shape has to hold up to the way people use it, not just how good they look. A bottle that feels stable and easy to use tends to disappear into your routine in a good way. A bottle that tips over, shifts position, or feels awkward keeps reminding you that you haven't quite solved your whole problem yet. So shape is not just style, It's also part of the user experience, and I want you to have the best user experience. What a bottle is made of matters more than most people realize, because the material directly determines the safety and maintenance and longevity of a bottle. And it affects whether the bottle makes sense for the setting where they'll be used. Some people are drawn to certain materials because they like it better or believe it's better for the environment or any number of other reasons, such as glass or ceramic or aluminum. And I get it, but the practical side matters too. Will it break if it's dropped? And just a little sidebar here, assume you will drop it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but there will come a day when you're either rushed or distracted and your wet hands will lose grip on that bottle. Will it hold up well in a persistently wet environment? How easy is it to clean? How heavy is it with and without liquid inside of it? Those are the kinds of questions that start to matter once you're interacting with the bottle on a regular basis. So material choice is never just aesthetic. It affects the day-to-day reality of owning the bottle. And again, this is one of those details that tends to get overlooked at the beginning because the main reason you're buying the bottle is to create a more beautiful experience in your home. It's easy to focus on how it looks in a photo. It's harder to remember that over time, that bottle is going to get touched, refilled, wiped down, bumped around, dropped, and asked to keep working over and over again. So material matters. Not because you need to become a bottle expert, but because the wrong material can create practical downsides that weren't obvious when you purchased it. Now, neck opening is one of the most overlooked parts of bottle choice, and this is a big one because people tend not to think about the opening much until they first try to refill it, and then suddenly it matters a lot. A narrower neck can make refilling slower, messier, more irritating, especially at first when you're just starting to get used to a new routine and of refilling your bottles. A wider opening usually gives you more room to work with, more tolerance, if you will, for pouring error. It can reduce spills and make the whole refill process feel less annoying, but there's more to it than that. The neck opening also affects what replacement pumps are available for it, if you ever need them, and what refill accessories can be used with the bottle, including funnels. If your pump fails, do you know what pump will work as a feasible replacement? Or do you have access to the manufacturer to ask them? And if your bottle's opening is too narrow for your preference, do you have a funnel that will make your life easier? This is one of those quiet structural details that ends up influencing a large part of your experience after the purchase. And most people don't realize this when they're first choosing a bottle. Meanwhile, the neck opening is quietly determining how practical that bottle is going to be later when you have to refill it. And that matters because a bottle is not just something you fill once. If it's refillable, then refilling is part of the experience. So the neck opening is not a minor detail. It's part of whether the bottle is easy to live with. Now, a lot of bottle frustration starts with the wrong pump and not the bottle itself, the pump. And in my experience, this is one of the biggest areas where that's overlooked during the purchase process because not all pumps are made for the same kind of liquid, and not all pumps dispense the same amount, and not all pumps hold up the same way over time. And finally, not all pumps are even built with the same internal considerations. I had a customer email me recently after buying a set of my frosted clear bottles with the high viscosity pumps. She wanted more output than the 2 cc's that my pumps provide. And you know what? That's fine. Everybody has different needs. Her original question to me was quite simple. She wanted to know what the thread dimensions were for the bottles so she could find a replacement pump. And something that stood out to me was that when she first asked Amazon's AI for the answer, it gave her the wrong information. So do with that information what you will. But let that be a good takeaway that you can't always rely on Amazon's AI to know the real answers to a technical question about a product on its website, especially if Amazon itself is not actually selling that product. Anyway, I gave my customer the thread dimensions, but I also told her that the thread size alone was not the complete answer. She needed to make sure that the replacement pump could handle high viscosity liquids and have a dip tube that was long enough to reach the bottom of the bottle. I also highly recommended that she find a replacement pump that was no contact, and that means that the spring inside the pump doesn't come in contact with the liquids that will be going through the pump. And the reason this matters is because if the spring does come in contact with the liquids, over time that spring will degrade because soaps, shampoos, and other household liquids have chemicals in them that will degrade the metal in the spring of the pump. So she was very grateful for this information, and to me, that exchange summed up this whole topic really well. What looked like a simple question required a more complex answer. And if you really want the bottle to work as you intended it to, you really don't have to understand everything about pumps, but you do probably need to understand that the decision and the choice between pumps does matter for what you're going to use it for. Even something as ordinary as a bottle pump has a lot more built into it than meets the eye. And if those details are wrong, that's often where frustration begins. By the way, since I've already designed all my bottles with these kinds of criteria in mind, I'll link below in the description box my recommendations for my products, my bottles, based on where you intend to use them and how you intend to use them, in case you're interested. The best bottle is the one that fits the job, because intended use is what tells you how to judge everything else. Size by itself is not the answer. Shape by itself is not the answer. Material, neck opening, and pump type are also by themselves not the answer. Instead, the real question is always, what is it going to be used for? Is it going in the shower, at the kitchen sink? Is it in a guest bathroom? Is it for foaming? Is it for thick liquids like conditioner? Is it something that will be used lightly or something that will be used constantly? Is ease of refilling especially important? Is stability important? Does the bottle need to work well for guests who are unfamiliar with it? Does it need to fit a specific shelf or niche in your home? That's the lens through which each bottle choice must be viewed. Because once you know the intended use, the other choices begin to make a little bit more sense and work together. That's why I don't think the best bottle is simply the prettiest one, although we all want a pretty one. Beauty matters, of course it does, but the better standard is fit. How well does the bottle fit the actual job that's being asked to do? That's the question that leads to a better post-purchase experience. And to me, that's really the whole point. A bottle appears to be a simple product at first glance. Just pick one that looks nice, right? Fill it up, move on. But as you can see, there's a lot more going on than that. So if I've shed light on anything here, I hope that it's this. Getting the choice right from the beginning can set you up for a much better experience later. If you want bottles that already have the important details thought through, you can browse through my options that will be in the description box. And I've recommended different ones based on the way that you'll use them.